So in this video, you're going to learn about muscle tissue and nervous tissue, which have some of the features they have are in common, and some of the functions that they have are unique. The breast muscles on the chicken, you can even see they're made of fibers. Right here you can see like the lines on them. Muscle tissue is always long and skinny and fibrous. So this is skeletal muscle. These are muscles that are voluntary that the chicken can control. So if you look closely at the top diagram up there, you can see that each long skinny fiber has many little dark spots on it. It's multinucleated. It also has little bands on it, they're called striations of overlapping dark and light bands that are going in a direction that's perpendicular to the fiber length. Those are called striations, and they're formed from the overlapping thick and thin filaments of proteins that are found inside of them that are able to slide across each other and cause a muscle cell to shorten. A lot of times chickens will come with some giblets inside, and I was hoping that this one would have a heart in it so we could look at some cardiac muscle, but it didn't have any heart in it. Some of the similarities between cardiac muscle and skeletal muscle is that cardiac muscle is also striated, and some differences are it only has one nucleus per cell, and the fibers aren't completely parallel, they're kind of interwoven. You can also see these little dark bands where they're kind of woven together that are called intercalated discs. Those include some little openings called gap junctions that allow the electrical conduction from one cell to rapidly diffuse right on into the cell that's adjacent to it, so that when one of them contracts, they can all contract together in a coordinated fashion. And the third type of muscle tissue is called smooth muscle tissue, found in the walls of hollow organs like those of your alimentary canal. And they are involuntary and not striated, and just have one nucleus per cell. So by now you should be able to determine what type of muscle tissue this is. Do you notice the striations on it? Do you notice the fibers are not completely parallel but a little bit woven? Do you notice those dark bands called intercalated discs? You got it. It must be cardiac muscle. Nervous tissue includes some types of cells called neuroglia that are supporting cells that actually don't conduct, but they just help the neurons conduct messages. One of the types of neuroglia students might have heard about before, especially if you've taken psychology, is Schwann cells that wrap themselves around the axon of the neuron. Each cell wraps itself around like a little jelly roll, and they help the electrical conduction that starts in this head or soma of the neuron, and they allow that nervous conduction to jump from one node to the next and speed up the conduction down the length of an axon of a nervous impulse. You may have heard before that neurons, once they get destroyed, can't replace themselves, and that's because neurons are amitotic. The neuroglia, however, the supporting cells, do go through mitosis, and they do reproduce themselves. So if anyone ever has a tumor or some sort of cancer in nervous tissue, like cancer of the brain, it's some of these supporting cells that have gone rogue and started reproducing madly and incorrectly and caused them to have cancer in the brain. Neuron cell bodies are pretty big, and you can see their spiky shape if you look in cross sections of spinal cords. Sometimes people will take a long nerve and tease it apart to see the individual axons. You only have to magnify about 100 to 400 times to be able to see those things. If you look at an entire organ, like the cross-section of a spinal cord, you can see some areas are darker where they have a lot of neuron cell bodies, and other areas like the surrounding of that butterfly shape in a cross-section of a spinal cord look paler. Those paler areas are called the white matter, and they're made up where you have more of the Schwann cells surrounding the axons, and the axons are traveling vertically up and down the spinal cord. So the darker areas are called gray matter, and the lighter areas are called white matter. Sometimes you hear those words used in describing nervous tissue organs like your brain and your spinal cord. And that is it. Bye. Give your heart and soul to me, and life